We should be recording now, so everyone, best behavior and smiles. Want to see you. Just final last minute housekeeping. Please do keep your microphone on mute so that we don't get any background noise while our people are presenting. But do feel free to leave your camera on. We like to see smiling faces, so if you'd like to leave your camera on, that's terrific. We're going to go in the order that it is on the agenda. So it will be Anchor Balloon with Vishal Gupta going first, Rachel Cash with Elroi, hope I'm saying that right, Elroi is going second, Great Lakes Crystal Technologies with Keith Evans is going third, and our panelists today, I would like to, before we get started, let each of them introduce themselves. So Hirak, if you'd like to unmute yourself and introduce yourself, that would be terrific.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hirak Parikh. I'm the fund manager for Biomedical Venture Fund.
To initiate I'm joining Sandra Cochran's Kalamazoo Venture Tuesday.
You got to put yourself on mute, my friend. Thank you. Hirak, go ahead and finish.
So I run the Michigan Biomedical Venture Fund at the University of Michigan. We primarily invest in life science and healthcare technologies. We've made about 10 investments. We're about to do a couple more this month, so I'm pretty excited. And thanks, Sandra, for inviting me. It's my second time here at Venture Tuesday, so happy to be here.
It is your second time, and thank you for coming back to join us again. You always give terrific insights. We appreciate your time. Skip, you're also a second timer, I believe, maybe third timer. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Always happy to be with you, Sandra. Thank you for inviting me. My name's Skip Sims. I'm Senior VP at Ann Arbor Spark. I'm also the managing member of the Michigan Angel Fund. And we've got an initiative to get more and more high net worth households in our state to participate in this asset class and start investing in our startups to diversify our economy and grow it. And so we're excited about being engaged in that initiative and happy to be here.
Great, thank you. And our last panelist is new to us. Nancy Philippart is with us from Bell Capital. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. Would you unmute and introduce yourself?
Great. Hi, Sandra. It's Nancy Philippart. As Sandra said, I am one of the general partners of Bell Michigan. We are a social impact early stage investment fund that focuses on investing in women-owned and gender-diverse startups. So this is my first time here, and I'm very pleased and excited to participate.
Great, thank you. So here we are, three terrific panelists, three terrific companies. So let's go ahead and jump right in. As I said, our first presenter is Anchor Balloon, Vishal Gupta. So Vishal, why don't you go ahead and share your slides? Let's make sure we can see them. There we go. And if you have your timer on your end, you'll have 10 minutes. I'll need you to do that. And when you are ready, you may begin.
All right, I can't see the timer. Do you know where it is?
You may be on your phone. I don't have one that.
Oh, okay, no problem. Hi, good morning, everybody. And it's a real pleasure to be in company of such, wonderful people. I'm Vishal Gupta. I'm actually a practicing interventional cardiologist at Ascension Borges Medical Center. I've been here for about 13 years. I moved from Boston, where I was a faculty at Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard School of Medicine, and I finished my training there, and I moved to Kalamazoo. And the reason I moved to Kalamazoo was because I was here for my residency. That was one. The second thing was that I had known that this hospital here has a huge history of innovation. Some of you know my partner, Tim Fischel. We've been involved in multiple startups over the last, couple of decades. And, Borges was actually a place where angioplasty was performed. Actually, we were the second hospital in the whole country to perform angioplasty. I mean, guys from Mayo and Cleveland actually came and learned it from us here. And in the past 2 decades, we've had multiple innovations that came out of Kalamazoo. So, it was sort of something of a calling that I came back, and I've been really privy to some of the innovation, and, here's mine. I do about 500 to 600 heart caths a year, and about 300 stent procedures, which is called percutaneous intervention, and about 200 structural cases like valves and things like that. So that's my forte. So, when you take care of a patient with heart disease, the key is to be able to put a stent in a blocked artery. And here's a picture of a stent. It is a metallic tube on a balloon, which you have to go through a tortuous artery to get to the blockage. And lately, it has become exceedingly difficult because these arteries, patients are getting older, they have more comorbid conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, and their arteries tend to be calcified, very tortuous, diffuse disease, and sometimes it's very difficult to advance a stent to the blocked artery. And if you cannot advance a stent, then you may have to escalate their care to an open heart surgery, or maybe de-escalate to medical therapy, and they are at a huge risk of having a heart attack or dying from the procedure or not having the procedure. In reality, the arteries look like this. I mean, the cartoon doesn't give you the whole picture, but it could be extremely tortuous, and the blockages may be so far out that you could not take a stiffer stent all the way down to the art where the blockage is. There are two limitations of the current technology. One, all the stents go over a wire. And the problem with the wire is that it's a free end wire. And the tube that it goes through is a soft tube which will prolapse. So when you are trying to advance a stent and pushing on a stent and it hits a calcium or a turn, it tends to prolapse the wire, and the wire comes out and your stent stays where it is. So that's a major limitation. So I have had this idea for about a decade. As a fellow at Harvard, I had this idea, but with the children growing up and all that, I never put that into fruition. But every time I had a complex case, which we call complex PCI, I always wondered, why I hadn't worked on it. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I started working on it. We applied for a patent, and the idea is very simple but elegant. We took an existing balloon and we changed the way the internal of the balloon is. So what we did is the wire goes through this balloon, and when you increase the pressure in the balloon to do a simple angioplasty, by inflating the balloon, this actually collapses the internal structure of the catheter and pinches the wire. So it can lock the wire on which the stent has to move forward. So here's how it works. So you have a wire that goes right through the lesion, and then you bring the anchor balloon in. So it serves as an angioplasty balloon also. So you can do an angioplasty of the lesion. And once the lesion is, the balloons are usually very soft, so easily goes through the tortuous arteries. Then when you inflate again beyond the lesion, you can lock the wire. And while the wire is locked, you can advance a stent over it. Now you release the balloon, you take it out of the proximal hole, and then you pull the balloon out, and voila, your stent is in place where the lesion is, and you can go up and secure that artery and so that it doesn't collapse back. So it's a very simple but a very effective tool. Heart disease is a life-threatening condition. In fact, 1 in 4 people will die of heart disease. Every 36 seconds, somebody dies of heart disease. About 700,000 people will die this year. The lucky few get, diagnosed early, come to the hospital, and they either get an open heart surgery, which is about 300,000 cases a year, or a stent procedure, which are called PCI, about 1 million of these, which we perform. At least last year, we did about 1 million. The challenging part is that these patients are growing older, sicker, they have complex anatomies. So we have patients who have really complex anatomies, and then we have sicker patients on diabetes, fulminant diabetes, end-stage renal disease, on dialysis. And so that total accounts for about 64% of the cases in this day and age. I mean, about 10 years ago, this was very different. The problem with complex cases or these stent procedures is that there's lower success rate and there's poorer short and long-term outcomes. And with the increased complication rates of kidney injury, radiation injury, other vascular complications, and increased death. So we're starting to take care of a lot more sicker patients. Now, how do we deal with it right now? So out of the 64, we call something called push through, where you try a little more aggressive treatment, you put a stiffer catheter, and you get your case done. But what that does is it increases the risk of the procedure, reduces the safety, complication rate goes up. Another 17% use something called guide extension, which is a tube that goes beyond into the arteries so we can advance the stent. And it comes with its own significant complication rate. And 4% of the time, we would abandon the case and say it can't do it. And the rest of them, complex patients, we would just say can't do it, we don't even try, and they go for medical therapy or open heart surgery. Now, with one device, we can really change the way we practice interventional cardiology. If you can get a stent at the blocked artery, you can take care of the patient. So this device can help increase success of the treatment, distal reach, so it can go all the way to far off areas in the heart arteries, and you can put a stent in. It supports doing a heart cath from radial artery because you don't have to worry about your stent not getting there, and patients can get up early, go home probably the same day. Less risky procedure with all the aggressive maneuvers not being performed. It reduces the procedure time, it reduces the steps of the procedure, and obviously, it is really easy on the physicians because they know how to use a balloon. You don't have to teach an old dog a new trick. They've got the balloon just has a new function that can be utilized to advance the stent. So it's a multi-function balloon. For financial considerations for the hospital, anytime you increase the throughput for the physicians and for the lab is a very expensive time. We've got about 6 personnel per case that you have to spend your time on. And then, it is already patented, so we've got an excellent freedom to operate. We have, we suspect this is going to be a good old class 2 device with 510(k) approval. At least that's our regulatory strategy right now. And then, it will change the way we work. Once we do a diagnostic, we can use this device up front and not use as a bailout, because the bailout procedures that we do right now have a much higher risk. We started our program with a customer discovery. We did 30 plus face-to-face interviews. That means I did it with cardiologists, industry experts, key opinion leaders, hospital administrators. And then we had a company, GLG Market Research Company, that did 60 plus interventional cardiologists looking at what does complex PCI mean to them or complex stenting procedure mean to them, and what does it mean not to be able to advance a stent, and what are the current technologies. We came up with a good pivot, and this is our business model. I'm not going to go into detail, but it really solidified what we were doing with a really good plan to move forward. Currently, we are in our phase 2. We successfully completed our phase 1 in October. We started our device optimization phase. Our feasibility was done then, and we are hoping to have a design freeze by the end of February, and 1st March is our phase 2 review. Once we have a design freeze, we are hoping to start the balloon manufacturing, and hopefully we can finish our DV testing by July and start the FDA submission process, and then start the clinical validation at the same time. And hopefully by the end of the year or beginning of 2022, we would have an approval if we have no other issues. We've really achieved some really good milestones. We've completed our proof of concept feasibility studies with excellent demonstration of the locking mechanism on the balloon. We've got our patent got approved in January of this year with 10 claims, and we are applying for our CIP and methods patent. We've got some exclusive and excellent partners. These are some of the world's best balloon and catheter design manufacturing companies that we are working with. We have a $25,000 Michigan Emerging Technology Fund commitment, and we have applied for $297,000 SBIR Phase 1 non-dilutive application there. And then we have our $1.5 million angel funding that happened in January of 2020. So we were really lucky with our initial funding. We completed a fund in less than 2 weeks with oversubscription, and then we had to just shut at 1.5, which was our C Corp. We had initial papers for that. We did whatever we had intended in 2020 with prototyping and feasibility, spent about $100,000 out of $1.5 million. In 2021, we did our submission grant. We are getting ready for a design freeze and starting the validation and verification process, and hopefully apply for FDA. And then we'll be looking for another raise of capital, because for all this, we'll be spending about $1 million. In 2022, I hope to start the production line with building a really good team and start the commercialization process, and then look at some other developments that we have with this balloon. And we are hoping to spend around $3 million and start to have some revenue.
Okay, Vishal, you're 2 minutes over. Can you skip to a final slide so we can wrap up?
Sure,
please?
sure. So our, with the way the growth is going, we think that we have a significant revenue opportunity with the U.S. market of about 135 million and a global market of 320 million, at 30% in U.S. and 20% market penetration in the global market, with a market cap of about $450 million when fully implemented. We've got potentially really good acquisition partners, and they're all in the stent and balloon area. Really the heart of this technology tells me, and we know that we can now scale the pressure in the balloon to neurointervention, interventional radiology, endovascular, and interventional gastroenterology, anywhere where the stents or balloons are being used. So we've got a potential to scale beyond the heart. I'm seeking $3 million Series B, and obviously I'm not seeking today, but once we have our valuation after our FDA approval, we'll be looking at the second round, the B round, to start our commercialization and market development plan. This is our current team. We have my advisors, my medical advisors. I have a really good team with my project manager and my quality and regulatory people. And then we have got some excellent partners that we are working with to bring this wonderful device to fruition. I think this will be the device that will change the way we practice interventional cardiology and make it easier for the patients, and it'll be definitely life-saving for thousands of patients in the US and in the whole country. Thank you.
Okay, good job. Thank you, Vishal. So we've got about 5 minutes for Q&A. You've went a little over, so we're going to be a little limited on feedback. But Hirak, would you like to start us off and tell Vishal your impressions?
Sure, thanks. Great presentation, Vishal. This is very interesting. I did miss a couple of the earlier slides, so pardon some of my questions. But I had basically 2 questions, and I'll unmute myself. One is just to understand the differentiation exactly when it comes to your device versus other balloon angioplasty, and you talked about that. That's one. And then you may want to elaborate a little bit on the value proposition. Like you talked about that this reduces the procedure time. So that's definitely a benefit for the hospital. And then talking about differentiation, if you can kind of touch upon the other segment, which is the physicians as well, that would help a lot. Thanks a lot.
Great question. Thank you.
Okay.
So your first question is, how does the device differ from angioplasty balloon? So there are multiple small, subtle differences. So the first difference, and let me show you, and I can go and show my slide here.
If it's quick, Vishal, because you have about 4 minutes left, and we're not going to get to the other presenters if you take too long.
Okay. So
or the other panelists.
The wire port is different from a regular angioplasty balloon, and the internal design is different from the regular angioplasty balloon. So at this point, the wire does not come out of here. In most angioplasty balloons, it's way down there, so you cannot advance anything behind it.
We're only seeing your thank you slide.
Oh, okay. Well, you could see the balloon on that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So where are you guys? Okay. So that is the key difference, and that's where the patent is.
That's helpful.
Yeah. And the second thing is on the value prop. I think it enables the physician to advance the stent in almost every kind of anatomy that you can think of. So at this point of time, there are a significant number of cases where they have to either abandon or use very risky techniques. So that is the value prop, is it makes it easier, safer for both the patient and for physician to do the procedure. The second value prop was reducing the time. Whenever you can do a procedure faster, it does reduce the time. And we did that in our customer discovery, where we found that physicians thought this would reduce their overall case time by about 15 to 20% for the whole case total. It also reduces the number of devices that you can use. You don't have to use multiple balloons. You already have a balloon with this, and you don't need stiffer wires or multiple wires. So you're reducing the cost of the procedure itself, and it improves the safety because you're using less radiation, less contrast, and less time in the cath lab. All that relates to opportunity cost and improving the overall outcome of the procedure. I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
Great. Thanks a lot. That was helpful.
Thank you. Skip, would you like to weigh in, please?
Well, no questions, just comments. First of all, Vishal, know your audience, know your venue. Sandra was very nice in that she let you go over. In a lot of environments, you would be pitching and you would have gotten the hook, and half of what you said wouldn't have ever been heard. So you've got to make sure you know what your real limitations are before you start pitching. And if you got 10 minutes, practice and make sure you get it in 9.5.
Gotcha.
The presentation itself was excellent. I like the fact that you introduced yourself up top. I don't recommend that with all of the entrepreneurs, but in this particular case, I think it serves well that you establish your credibility right up front and you know what you're talking about. Sometimes it's good that the entrepreneur do that as opposed to waiting till later in the presentation. The other thing is, when you're giving a presentation like this, PowerPoints come in two versions. One is presentations like this where you're able to make the pitch personally and you want people focused on you and what you're saying, not on your slides. So some of your slides could have gone away. The everyone benefits slide, way too much information, too small a font. I didn't read any of your bullets, total waste of space. The business model canvas was probably not necessary slide either. The video was excellent. And so, picture says 1,000 words, video says 10,000 words. So that was great. I'm done.
Great. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you, Skip. And Nancy, what would you like to say?
Skip, essence of what he said was very similar to mine. So instead of repeating a number of the things that he said, I will add on to that. First of all, kudos. The description of the problem, your device, and how it works in the body was very nicely done, very simple. I see a lot of presentations, particularly from medical personnel who are very, very deep in stuff, and they leave those of us without medical training sort of behind in the weeds as to what are they really talking about. So that first part of your presentation, I think, was outstanding. I think you got into too much detail. Same thing on the benefits. What you said, I would pick, the fact that you have multiple benefits for multiple stakeholders is really, really powerful for this, but pick, the top one or two for the physician, the patient, the hospital, and really focus on those. The question that I had that you didn't address, is anyone else doing something like this? I understand how this is different than traditional angioplasty, but are others kind of working on this same solution? So where are you relative to what others do? As an investor, if people tell me there isn't any competition, that's a real negative. It causes me to lose confidence in the presenter. And then overall, I would just say, you need to manage your time. I wanted to see more business information. How much do you think this device is going to cost? What do you think it's going to be able to sell for? It's a great idea, but is there, a commercial proposition that works for the patient, the doctor, and the hospital? But other than that, I think this is a really amazing device. So kudos for the work that you've done.
Great. Thank you for
Thank
your
you. Thank you
comments.
all. And thank you. Thank you, Vishal. So we have to in order to stay on track, we will keep moving on, but our panelists and our presenters will be able to circle back and talk with each other at a later date, so further clarification could be provided. But wonderful presentation. Thank you, Vishal, and wonderful feedback from our panel. So if everyone is ready for the next exciting company, Rachel, if you are ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and show your slides. We can make sure that we see them first.
Can we see?
I do see. Go ahead and put it in presentation mode. There we go. Okay, panel, are you all ready? Excellent. Okay, Rachel, it's up to you. Go ahead and take it away.
Hi, my name is Rachel Cash, and I'm the founder and CEO of Elroi. We are a privacy data management tool for consumers and enterprises. I am a privacy attorney. I'm licensed here in Michigan. And what our focus at Elroi is that consumer privacy truly to us is a constitutional right. And in that constitutional right for privacy, we've seen multiple problems, specifically in the data marketplace. It's essentially the wild, wild west where we see a lack of standards and equality. By equality, what I mean is consumers, such as yourselves, lack control. Consumer data and privacy have historically been the responsibility of companies and marketing firms. We've seen this in 2016 with Cambridge Analytica, and have more exposure to how consumer data is being profited off of and sold by companies, with consumers really having no idea where their data is or lacking control. On an enterprise side, there's really no standards. There's a need to comply. There's over 130 countries that have in place legislation to protect privacy and data. But for enterprises, it's hard to meet those standards. And specifically in the US, I know this is a busy slide, but I'll break down the most important parts. In the US, we follow for our data privacy multiple different regulations, which are industry specific and state specific. So industry specific, meaning like HIPAA regulations. And even as recently as last year, we had the Michigan Proposal 2 that passed in Michigan by 83% bipartisan support, which the underbelly of that regulation was privacy driven, requiring a police officer to get a search warrant before they had access to your electronic device. We at Elroi are looking at those two indicators in the marketplace. Our data protection marketplace is projected to reach over 120 billion by 2020, and those indicators are supported by consumer awareness. So like in Michigan, 83% of consumers voted for more privacy protections, and over 85% of global customers wish they had more companies they could trust with their data. Additionally, we've seen increasing business impact. Businesses must comply with privacy regulations and data protection. It is built in and has more and more regulatory impact. There are shareholder derivative suits being allowed, private right of action suits, so individual consumers can sue companies for failures to comply, as well as FTC, so Federal Trade Commission's fines for non-compliance, and overbroad regulatory industry bodies holding companies responsible for regulations. Last year, we saw the CCPA, so the California Consumer Privacy Act, continue to evolve, as well as the GDPR, the European Union Privacy Policy, continue to expand and impact enterprises here in the United States. At Elroi, our solution is rethinking the power dynamic between consumers and enterprises. The underbelly of compliance is the basis of our compliance in the US is really to protect consumers. So Elroi would like to empower consumers to exercise their privacy rights. Our privacy rights are very much like our voting rights. We have to exercise them to prevent them from being infringed on, as well as providing tools for enterprises to meet privacy compliance requirements. By providing this duality between these two parties, we believe that controlling your data, every person can control their world. For our consumers, we provide data visualization down to the data element for each data element you give to a company. We believe data is a reflection of ourselves and your uniqueness. So if you like cat pictures, and guns, for example, that's what companies are using to market to you and cause actions in our marketplace. We additionally have provided a centralized repository of privacy statements that describe the specific impact to you as a customer, and have centralized the ways that you individually can action your rights against a company. Those action rights are embedded in the CCPA and the GDPR, so allowing you to request disposal, return of data, and data modification. Currently, this is a wireframe of our dashboard. Our current solution is available on Internet Explorer, Safari, and Chrome. It is a browser extension that ties you to our dashboard that, again, pulls down to each company, the logo, as well as the data elements you provided that company. Now, while we're providing consumers an increased access to exercising their rights, we understand that there needs to be, again, that duality for enterprises. Our customer solution is free, because again, we believe it's a constitutional right. But our enterprise solution, we have an MVP product that helps companies reach tactical compliance under both the CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act, and the GDPR. In order to reach tactical compliance, the regulations require an electronic means for customers to make customer requests. We have built into our dashboards controls to help companies meet that regulatory requirement, as well as the easily deployable web form for companies that may either not have a legal team or a technology team, as well as we've provided job aids to help companies educate themselves and understand their impact. This is an example of our dashboard. Again, we built in the regulatory controls such as time and automated the emails to the consumer. Our pricing for our solution at MVP is $129 for a company who has up to 20,000 customers, and it can go higher based on the complication of the industry as well as the number of customers, and that we've asked companies to contact us. Both our enterprise solution is in a production environment, and we're launching our pilot for our enterprise solution. For our milestones and traction right now, our milestones last year was to launch our consulting program. We helped companies identify their gaps in security and privacy compliance. Again, this year we have our enterprise MVP launch. We are in production and rolling out our pilot with companies lined up for our pilot program. Additionally, what we're excited about on Thursday is our launch of our consumer program. January 28th is National Privacy Day in the US. And so we are rolled out strategically with other privacy partners to roll out not only our introduction to our consumer product, but our MVP launch. And in Q4 of 2021, this year, we are launching our SaaS solution for our enterprises to really help automate helping enterprises get into strategic compliance in the US. In terms of traction, we just recently joined the Tampa Bay WAVE program. I don't know what that says, WAVE program. It's WAVE program in their cyber cohort. We'll be launching our change.org petition asking for a national privacy policy in collaboration with Cyber Collective. Own Your Data, which is led by Brittany Kaiser, who was the lead and one of the directors in Cambridge Analytica, and is on the other side now fighting for people's data privacy rights and the markup. Last quarter, we reached over 20,000 customers and consumers building with events and awareness building. And we are launching our pilot program where we currently have 3 commitments and are having additional conversations with 15 cybersecurity companies. We have entered an agreement with Arc Access as a channel partner to be a reseller for our product, as well as we've received Spark's non-diluted funding as of right now. In terms of our sales model, I'll just talk to it really quick. We have a direct sales team led by Tazeen, who has over 5 years in security sales. We've made connections with different privacy organizations and are leveraging their networks, such as Cyber Collective, Markup, and the Future of Privacy Forum. We are building our channel partner network with our different security partners. Many times CISOs are also responsible for the privacy, as well as we're building our content awareness and consulting program. In terms of competition, we have one competitor really in the enterprise portion, which is OneTrust. They are the leader, and recently in December had a valuation of $5 billion. SayMine is our consumer competitor. They provide consumers the mechanism to request their data, but it's all through email and it's not a streamlined process. I will quickly talk about our team. We currently have a technology team of 4 builders. We have 3 other attorneys on our team that span from North Carolina, California, and New York, as well as a sales team that includes 2 individuals who are professionals in sales. And I will open up for questions now.
Wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Rachel. Skip, we're going to start with you to provide feedback first.
Sure, no questions, just comments. One, this would, a lot of these slides are appropriate for a business plan. They're not appropriate for a pitch like this. Way too much text. Anytime you go to a small font on a PowerPoint, that's trouble for this kind of a presentation. It's fine for a business plan. I can read it at my leisure, take my time, but not when you're pitching like this. The other challenge, and this is very common among entrepreneurs when they're pitching, and that is you're spending so much time in the first part of your presentation on various and sundry things, many of which are, you know, it's okay, but then you run out of time and you're rushing through very important slides that come later. 2 slides I would love to have been up for a lengthy period of time, where's your dashboard, which for me would have explained what the product is. I still don't know what you do. I don't have a clue what you do and what your product is, how it works. The dashboard probably would have explained an awful lot of that to me, had you just gone through that. And then the financial slide, I mean, it was up for like 2 seconds. From an investor perspective, that's an important slide. That's a very important slide. And so we want to know what your strategy is going forward to sell your product, what kind of key information that you're, indicators you're looking at and that you'll be measuring yourself against as you grow. How many customers do you need? How are you going to attract them that are going to generate the kind of revenue you're projecting for the next few years? And so those are, I guess, my comments in general. But otherwise, you do a nice job. You're a good presenter, but I just, for what it's worth, those are my views.
Thank you, Skip. Wonderful feedback. Nancy, can I have you go next, please?
Sure. Hi, Rachel. And in all transparency, I'm going to say I have seen Rachel's presentation before. So this is my second time around. I would say the biggest issue, Rachel, that I have is I still have not, in my mind, been able to reconcile the dual play of customer and enterprise. Those seem to me like they're conflicting objectives. And so my recommendation to you is, again, you spend a lot of time up front talking about privacy legislation and so on. I think you could spend 2 minutes on or less than 2 minutes on laying out the landscape. But then you really need to get into the details of your customer product, why that makes sense relative to, I get the enterprise piece, but I have a very hard time, and now as I said, I've seen this twice, I have a very hard time reconciling how the customer piece and the enterprise piece, in a sense, are not in conflict with each other. If I were an enterprise customer and I knew that you were developing data for customers that at some point might allow them to sue me, I don't think I'd want to do business with you. So in any event, that is my biggest issue. I also support some of what Skip says is, I think you are a very capable presenter. You're a very credible presenter. You really need to simplify your slides. There's too much information. And when I'm trying to read the slides, then I'm not really hearing what you're saying.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Hirak, what about you? What are your thoughts?
So a couple of quick, just to add to what Skip and Nancy said. So you are charging on the enterprise side. So like Skip said, it would be useful to understand how that sort of how that business model works. And I didn't catch it, but you are not charging the customer for using the product, correct? So how is that going to work? And also sort of answer the question that Nancy raised, is that, on whose side are you on the consumer side or the enterprise side? Given that the two competitors that you mentioned, I mean, they are focusing on one particular segment, and maybe that's for a reason. But I think, this product is very timely. I think there's going to be legislation, like it's on top of people's mind. And one general question I wanted you to sort of address is that a number of companies are built on the business model that they give you the product for free, but then they sell your data, like Gmail or Amazon to some extent. So what will happen when these companies say, fine, we won't give it to you for free, but now we're going to charge you for using Gmail, say, $20 a month or something like that. And then we won't sell your data. So how is that going to sort of affect the business going forward?
Yeah, so for for our purposes, the legislation, when it doesn't necessarily allow for financial gains for not selling data, you can opt out of do not sell. But what we've done for the business going forward is simplifying that process. So the regulations require no financial incentives for do not sell. So companies cannot put that model together necessarily, but what we're doing for consumers is allowing them to streamline opting out of do not sell that data. What our roadmap to in 5 years would be is to become a data broker between the consumer, but having the consumer as the one who wants to sell their data. From an enterprise perspective, the regulation or the breadth of the regulation doesn't essentially allow for a company to do that. It would be interesting, and I would have to go back and do further, I would say, legal deep dive into a business who could propose that the change in what the regulation is meant to do.
Okay. Panelists, we still have a few more minutes. So is there any other follow-up questions or comments? Nothing else from the panel? Okay. Rachel, any other last minute comments you'd like to make? A final comment before we move on?
No, I appreciate the feedback. It's always helpful. And I will work on simplifying the slide, so I appreciate it.
Oops. Go ahead and give that back here. Okay, perfect. So we are quickly moving on to our third and final presentation. We have another great company lined up. We've got Great Lakes Crystal Technologies. Keith Evans is with us to present. So Keith, if you are ready to put up your slides, let's take a look and make sure we see them. Not yet. I think try again. And you're also muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I hear you. Unshare. I think you're sharing the wrong screen.
Let's see. Okay. Let's try it again.
Yeah.
Can you see my mouse?
I don't think so. I don't see anything yet. We see like your main screen is what we're seeing.
So you can see something now?
We just see your main screen. We see us. So unshare, and then you've got to go back in and find that your slide page.
Well, I'm putting it up on the screen. Maybe things are slow.
Yep, let's try again.
I hit share.
And then you have to find the slides.
Right, my slides are on my other screen, but when I go to,
there we go. Got it.
You see this?
Yep, we got that.
The
Good.
difficulty is when I go to present.
There it is. Yeah.
You see the full slide?
Yep, we're looking good.
Awesome.
Okay, so if you've got your timer ready, I've got mine. And panel, are you all ready to go? Okay, then Keith, whenever you are ready, you may begin.
Well, thank you very much, Sandra, and thank you for having me here today. And good morning, everybody. I'm Keith Evans, President and CEO of Great Lakes Crystal Technologies, and our mission is to become the leading provider of high-performance diamond materials. This is the same slide, but I wanted to show you what we mean by diamond materials. Here we have on the left side, a cartoon diagram of a single diamond plate, which would be perhaps 5 millimeter by 5 millimeters by 0.5 millimeter thick. And we have a process that we've licensed from Michigan State University where we bring in methane molecules in a plasma reactor, and then the crystal grows thicker. And in this case, you can see in the center, it actually got larger laterally. And then the idea is to use that to make many diamond plates in this one example. But I'll come back to this later. So who cares about diamond? Well, it turns out my background is in physical chemistry, and I've spent my entire career in what are called post-silicon semiconductors. So in the group 4 of the periodic table, you've got carbon, silicon, and germanium there that are pretty important materials today. And everybody knows about silicon. So if we take a look back in the 1950s, it turns out germanium was actually the material used for the first commercial solid-state devices that at that time started to replace the vacuum tubes in our televisions. And I remember helping my father change vacuum tubes in our television. And then later, these things became solid state. And in fact, you can go to the Transistor Museum and see a picture of what was in the Westinghouse catalog at the time. And of course, that was a paper catalog. Then silicon took over shortly thereafter. And I think primarily because there's tons of sand out there and germanium's a little harder to get. But germanium's easier to grow. Silicon's a little more difficult. And diamond is even more difficult, which we'll come to in a second. But of course, silicon has enabled the creation of an industry that has over $500 billion in annual revenues. It's responsible for supporting the creation of Silicon Valley. I just read this morning where people are concerned Taiwan has too much silicon industry capabilities, and especially with what's going on between China and Taiwan, that's a risk to the nation, and ROW is the rest of the world. This is huge, and we all know about it. But the future is in carbon. In fact, if diamond was easier to grow, there would be no Silicon Valley. There would be Diamond Valley. So this is where we are 100% focused. And the reason is simple. Diamond has better properties than silicon, better than germanium. In fact, it has better than silicon carbide, better than gallium nitride. And material scientists and electrical engineers have known this for many, many years. If we take a look at the total addressable markets, we estimate that today there's or last year, in fact, about a $600 million addressable market for diamond materials for these applications, which we divide out into the electronics space, detectors, optics, and quantum technologies. And if we look forward, we believe these are all going to grow rapidly, especially the quantum technology, which we read about every day in the news. So this is a picture of people that we've met in our customer discovery forays, which are continuous. And I show the reason I'm up here in the Michigan region working hard to get this company going and to be successful. It all started with words from John Smedley on the top right. When I told him I was looking at doing this kind of thing here, he says, if you can do that, you'll become my new best friend. He has a 7-figure budget for substrates, and that's just for research and development. And I could tell similar stories about all the other characters here. There's a great pain in the market today, especially the research market, because most of this hasn't come to commercial fruition. A notable exception is in the top right. X-ray detectors are available on the market today, and we have letters of support and a desire to be an early adopter of our materials from the leading provider of those X-ray detectors. The problem statement is well summarized by what we were told by a major defense prime, and they have an extremely strong patent position in diamond-based quantum technologies. And to quote them, the supply chain is 100% broken for high-performance diamond. I guess I'm paraphrasing. And our solution is 35 years of intense R&D at Michigan State University. I've known this my entire career. that Michigan State was the center of excellence in our nation in diamond materials. Arizona State University, a close second. Arizona State, a little more of a device center of expertise based on diamond materials, and Michigan State, a little more on the materials side, and both having a healthy admixture of both. And I'll tell you why Fraunhofer is an important component here as we look at the timeline of innovation at Michigan State University. 35 years, started in 1985. There's lots of patents and lots of papers with Professor Asmussen's name on it from 85 on. Professor Grotjan, who is the co-founder of Great Lakes Crystal Technologies and on the call today, he joined in 1987. Shortly after getting his PhD at Purdue University. Fraunhofer was attracted to this effort in early 2000s and built a facility on campus. And the head of Fraunhofer on campus, his office is just adjacent to Professor Grotjan's. And Professor Grotjan actually directed Fraunhofer's R&D activities for many years and then stepped down recently to help form Great Lakes Crystal Technologies. And then you see on the bottom right there, we licensed a bundle of MSU patents accordingly. And you can see, I won't read all the words, it is a bit wordy, but lots of advancements over the years, and then recent years, a real strong focus on quantum technologies. So I showed you this in the second slide, just an example of one of the diamond images taken at Michigan State University from one of their advanced crystal growth techniques. And this is just showing you a second one where indeed they took or four diamond plates and arranged them laterally and grew over them. And I had a top-notch engineer from Corvo tell me that won't work. Well, he's wrong. It does, and it's a pretty phenomenal feat. And I can't say that we understand the detailed kinetics on what's going on, but I have seen it done in silicon carbide as well. And this is represents one of several strategies to make the materials larger laterally, which is important for some of the markets, but not all the markets. This is our competitive comparison matrix, where we look at our top competitors and rank them, the strongest on the left, that's us. Element 6 has a strong IP position. They have delivered some really high quality materials. They have a huge problem with product variability, delivery time. They've gone in and out of the market because they are totally distracted or largely distracted by the large gemstone market, which is rapidly accepting synthetic diamond over earth mine diamond. And then you can see our other competitors and we've compared these companies in terms of the structural quality, which is super critical for all the applications we're targeting. Chemical purity, very important for most of them. Product variability is always important to not have. And the only way you're going to get all those if you're completely high-tech focused, and that's us. The last column there, or row, process scalability, refers to these two different techniques. The high pressure, high temperature technique is trying to mimic the conditions under the Earth's crust, and it is inherently difficult to scale the lateral dimensions for. The chemical vapor deposition is just like the techniques to use to make pentium chips and high volume LEDs. It's extremely scalable in terms of lateral dimensions. So here's the management team. You've got me, and I have had vice president positions and CEO positions for the last couple of decades. 13 years at leading Kyma Technologies, who's the leading gallium nitride company in the U.S. and a close partner of us. And I was a VP at QED and posed the merger to form IQE, and we went public, had a great exit. And I was vice president of technology at Vico, where we led the world in the supply of advanced instrumentation for the LED market and the RF transistor market for cell phones. Paul Quayle has joined us. He worked with me at Kyma Technologies on the Diamond project in partnership with MSU, which was really facilitated us all coming together. And he came up here and postdoc with Professor Grotjan for a couple years before joining us this past summer. And then Ramon Diaz has agreed to come join us. He's finishing up his PhD in Professor Grotjan's group as we speak. And then there you see Professor Grotjan, he's a world-class technologist in this space, and that is recognized worldwide. Our timeline shows we incorporated in August of 2019. We did a great job. I think Jeff Wesley's on the call with Red Cedar Ventures. We met all the milestones that Red Cedar and Spartan Innovations laid out. My position at the time was an entrepreneur in residence for Spartan Innovations. You can see myself, Professor Grotjohn, and Paul in the bottom left. We're currently working to establish our pilot line at the Van Camp Incubator Center just off campus. We have taken $520K in seed round financing, including $500K from a large materials company headquartered in Japan. We're working with them on a press release to make good PR and divulge who they are, but currently we're not divulging who they are. And very importantly, and not baked into our forecast, which I'll show you, is we entered into a memorandum of understanding with our large investor, and that anticipates joint ventures and joint development agreements, co-marketing and co-development going forward. We had our first monthly meeting with them last night. We're very excited about what that can bring. That we hope to close on the seed round at the end of March, and you can see these other bullets here. I'll move on for the moment here. So we have lots of important advisors and partners and alliances in place, and these are only some of them. I won't tell you about them all, but I have mentioned the strategic investor, obviously a very critical partner for us because we need their financing, and the MOU really speaks to some exciting possibilities going forward. Also, I'd point to Cove Diamond. That's Professor Grotjohn's sister company. It is focused on gemstones. It is co-located here in the Van Camp Incubator Center, and Professor Grotjohn has an inherently low-cost design for the crystal growth tools, which are a major component of our capital equipment requirements. And we were originally looking to raise $2 million. We will still take up to $2 million, but because of the low-cost nature of his equipment, we have downward revised our target raise to $1 million.
Okay, you are 2 minutes over. Could you go to a final slide and wrap it up? I
sure can. So final slide, I'll just settle on our revenue forecast. We're planning to reach $48 million in total revenues in 5 years. There's a healthy contribution with government contracts. I have lived through, watched closely. I brought in over $50 million around that order in government contracts myself. I watched Cree get $30 million contract year after year after year as they went and became a force to be reckoned with in silicon carbide materials, then silicon carbide enabled LEDs, and then today they're really a power electronics company. And you can see the other things. We're going to make lots of hires. This has baked in it the $1 million raise and a $10 million A round in mid-2022. So I'll go lots of exciting exits, and thank you very much.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Keith. Good presentation. Nancy, we're going to start with you this time. What kind of feedback would you like to give to Keith today?
Okay. Hi, Keith. I would have to say, again, not unlike what we've talked with others, is time management of this presentation. You started your slides by saying that, Great Lakes Crystal wanted to be a high performance crystal, the leading provider of high performance crystalline diamonds. And then, I think I had to go, you went through 8 slides with a lot of history, a lot of chemistry before you told me why. And so I think you could really simplify your presentation by stating that objective and, much more quickly and concisely up front saying why that is important, which would then, and you kind of took us on, some history tours, which, again, was kind of interesting backstory, but took time. I wanted to learn more about why the supply chain was broken. I wanted to learn more about your actual solution, like to grow crystals, diamond crystals, is that, a 2-month process, a 2-year process, a 2-day process. So, I needed to know a little bit more about the process of how you did this so that in my mind, I could, as an investor, I could better understand the economic viability. And then I have lots of questions on your business case and financials, but obviously, again, we didn't have time to go through that. But I think this is a real exciting technology. The traction that you have with the partners, I think is really exciting. Had you had more time, you could have talked to us a little bit about how those partners, are strategically being used to look at what you might ultimately do for an exit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Hirak, we're going to go to you next.
Thanks, Keith, for the presentation. I like the history stuff because I'm kind of a nerd about that, but I do agree with Nancy that maybe it could be shorter. I think a really good opening would be to really focus on the applications, because obviously this, has multiple applications in many different industries. So I think putting that up front and then kind of maybe spending a little bit of time on germanium and silicon and why you're here would help with the time management. And then I think you clarified it later, but in the middle of the presentation, you said that, you're open to the research market. So my concern is like, what's this market? How big is it? And then you talked about very large contracts. So it seems very large contracts with maybe few players right now. It also helped me, and I haven't quite understood where this whole fits in the ecosystem of making these devices. Like, are you, very early, and then it goes to somebody else who, uses some of these crystals. So that wasn't quite clear. But other than that, I think, you did a good job of, presenting what this is. I mean, this is a highly sort of technical product as well. So, knowing your audience would help. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Good, good. And Skip, we're going to have you bring it on home.
All right, Keith, it was a nice job. You're a good presenter, but you fell into a lot of the classic mistakes that investors make when pitching to investors, and that is they don't appreciate or understand their audience and what their audience is really interested in. I agree, the history was great. It was very helpful. You did a nice job. You could have done it in 1/3 of the time, and therefore left yourself the time you needed for later in your presentation when you got to the meat of what I'm looking for as the investor. Then the product, you spent way too much time on the product. I'm not a chemist. I don't know how this stuff works. All I need is a high level of what it is, why you're doing it, how it works. But the detail, you went in way more detail than you needed to. And you didn't spend any time, and I think Nancy was the one that pointed this out, on how you're going to go to market. And Hirak was kind of zeroing in on that too. How are you going to market? Who are you going to market to? And why? What's the sales process? Is it, is a sales cycle a short one or a long one? If these are $10 million sales, how long does it take a company or an organization to make that decision to buy? I mean, it could be a year. It could be 2 years. It could be 3 months. I don't know. You didn't address it. I want to know things like that. Thank goodness you did spend a fair amount of time on the financial slide. It was good that I had time to kind of digest at least the key numbers that were important to me. So thank you for doing that, because that'll generate questions later. And so that's a good thing. On all your slides, you want to leave me with questions so that when you're done, I'm going to be quizzing you. You want me to be in a position to ask you lots of questions. And so provide me enough teas to do that. And that financial slide and other slides would do that as well. But you had nothing on marketing. You really got to address that. Who the customers are, your sales cycle, how you're going to reach them, how you're going to get through that process. Because you can have the best widget in the world, but if you can't sell it, it's worthless.
Okay, thank you, Skip.
All right. We are to the point of the program where our panelists have all weighed in, our presenters have all made their pitches. Is there anyone in the audience, go ahead and unshare there, Keith. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question or would like some clarification? I always like to give the audience a little chance to chime in if there's anyone who would like to share. You may unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment. Oh, it's radio silence today. That's okay. Again, this is one of those
Sandra?
weird things about being like this. Yeah, someone has something. Where are you?
No, it's Skip. I forget. I've been meaning to ask this for now 10 minutes. Shame on me, because I keep forgetting. All three of the entrepreneurs, if you haven't, we're going to be sending you a survey. And I hate to do this because everybody sends out these surveys and you're inundated and you got better things to do, I know. But we do an angel survey, and it's very important that the Michigan Venture Capital Association and the Michigan angel community get responses from our entrepreneurs as to how much capital they've been able to raise and from where, so that as we go and try and change policy on your behalf, we've got the data to back it up. And to get that data requires it coming from you. So we're going to be sending out a survey. Please respond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, before I wrap it up, before I say goodbye to everyone, I would like to point out we are going to be, and thank you for bringing up Michigan Venture Capital Association. WMed Innovation Center is partnering with the Michigan Venture Capital Association to offer another type of program like this several times throughout this year, and we're calling it Turn the Tables. So everyone is familiar with events like what we're doing here today, where presenters, companies pitch to investors. We're going to turn the tables with it, and we're going to have an event where 3 venture capital firms make presentations about their funds, what they invest in, what their sweet spot is, what their process is, how they make investment decisions, and just kind of an educational, again, it's not, you know, they're not out there soliciting to get a whole bunch of people to apply, but it's about educating all of us about how venture capital works, how decisions are made, how they're structured, all those kinds of things. We'll be offering that in collaboration with MVCA. Our first one will be March 30th, which will also be a Tuesday, and that will be from 11 to 12 o'clock. There will be a lot of information. MVCA has the information. I have the information. It'll be going out to various calendars around the state. We hope that you all will join us for that. I did promise to put this slide up one more time. If I have anybody from WMed who is in this presentation today for CE credit, there's your activity code 22686. Time code, or the code is time sensitive. So if you are from WMed doing CE credit, write this down or get a hold of me later, and I will make sure that you get it. And with that, we're going to wrap it up a little bit early. I always like to say that we're going to go to 10:30 just in case we get some really great conversation going. But if there is nothing else that needs to be said, last chance to speak or forever hold your peace. Anyone?
You did a great job, Sandra. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
Alon. Nice
you.
to see
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you again on behalf of WMed Innovation Center. We're happy to have you. We'll be doing this again in April. 3 more exciting companies, 3 more fabulous panelists. Join us then. Join us in March for the Turn the Tables event. And I hope you all have a beautiful, wonderful day, and take care, and everyone stay safe. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.